Hello, this is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, and so excited to come to you today with an interview with someone oh so special to my heart because she is a client of mine and we have worked together, and she just has such a beautiful story and I feel like represents so many aspects of many, many women in the world who are struggling with food issues, or how I call them food shoes, or just something that's taking away like the freedom in your life and keeping you from doing what you want to be doing and feeling how you want to be feeling and having that peace. So I would love for you to hear her story, and she is here on the show with us today and we're going to get to know her. So I would like to introduce you guys to Andrea. Hello.
Hello, I'm so happy to be talking with you today, Lydia, and talking to everybody out there.
all the people. So thank you for being on the show. I'm just excited for our conversation and just hear more about you. So let's dive right in. I would love to start out with just hearing. So Andrea, when you first got in contact with me, or when you were first looking for a solution, I would love to know where you were at that point, and give us some backstory. Tell us what your relationship with food has kind of been, how you got to where you were looking for some sort of solution. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. I think honestly, it was just sheer desperation because I had tried so many things for so many years. And I I was really scared to reach out to you. I was like, here's this woman on the internet. I don't know what this means. Right. But let me give it a try because I've tried all these other things and they haven't worked. So I started on one diet in high school. I feel like that kind of led me down this eating disordered behavior that went on for many, many, many years, and was really so confused for so many years about why I started binge behavior. So I had kind of been on this diet, started kind of moving into the bulimia territory. I'd recovered from bulimia, but I was still binge eating, and I couldn't figure out why that was, and what the missing piece was, the magic piece that would keep me from, or free me from binge eating. And so it really was desperation reaching out to you. And I'm so glad it worked because I'm not sure what else I would have done, honestly.
Yeah, beautiful. Tell us a few more details. When you say your bulimia or binge eating behavior, what did that look like to you? What was a typical binge, or how did this show up in your life?
Well, I thought for so long that it was emotional related because I went through years and years of therapy. That was my cat knocking off my phone. I went through years and years of therapy. And so I had really developed this idea that it was because of my childhood that I was binge eating, or, because of all of these unresolved emotions. And so I felt like anytime anything was happening in my life, I kind of turned to binge eating. And it became this really powerful place. So I think at its worst in high school and college, I would be binging every day, 4 times a week, just kind of really, really consistently, as a way to, I thought at the time, relieve stress, or make myself feel better, keep myself entertained, help ease anxiety, right? I came up with all of these things that I thought were kind of triggering binge behavior. And what finally happened was I realized that I had attached every emotion possible to binge eating. So I had realized, right, when I'm sad or when I'm stressed or when I'm anxious, I binge eat. Oh, but wait, when I'm happy, I'm binge eating. When I'm at a party with friends and enjoying myself, I do, so it was very confusing to feel like in the beginning, maybe this was a response to some sort of emotional thing that was happening in my life, but it just developed into this habit that I was doing all the time, mostly in secret, right? Mostly in my house when nobody else was around, but sometimes not, sometimes at parties and things like that as well. So I think because I had attached so much emotion to it, it just became this really big part of my life. That was a secret, shameful part of my life, but was still a really big part of my life.
Yeah. And how did that impact you? Just feeling like you had this shameful secret and just carrying that around, how did that affect you?
Oh my gosh, it was so scary and, again, confusing. I mean, there was a point in college when I was a peer educator for a peer group on eating disorders. So we would go do programs about eating disorders, and I would go talk about eating disorders with all of these other college students and be secretly binge eating. And I felt like I know this is strange behavior. I don't like this behavior, but I just don't know how to stop it. So it was really confusing, and there was a lot of shame attached to the behavior. You know, I'm a writer, so I've written really extensively on a lot of things. I wrote a book of poems basically about my dad dying. I wrote a book of poems about having chronic pain. And this was something I haven't talked to very many people about. I have never written about it. You know, it was not something I shared with many friends. So it was really just this shame-filled part of my life. Do you think that's common with the women you work with, that there's so much shame around this?
It is so incredibly common. It is very interesting that you bring that up. Like, that's such a strong through line of, one, the shame and the secrecy, right? Which really propels the behavior.
Right.
Because it just creates all of this, added weight and, just so much heaviness around it. And two, something that you brought up that I think is a really common thing that I see is there are so many successful, powerful, active women that suffer from binge eating. And it's a really common thing to feel this sense of hypocrisy. Like, it's almost like it piles on the shame and the hiding because it's so dissonant with your identity. Like you said, like you've been vulnerable and, written these poems and been active and, like talking about eating disorders, right? And but secretly, there's this thing behind with the facade, which feels like the real you, but then it's dissonant with what you're actually doing. So yeah, absolutely. It's a really, really common thing. So,
well, and I think I had identified as a feminist since college, at least, right? I've kind of always thought of myself as a feminist activist. And so I feel like I hadn't bought in to the kind of societal views on thinness. I felt like I was trying to fight against so much of these problematic ways that women are told to behave in the world. And yet I had this thing I'm carrying around with me, right? That felt like it was attached to thinness sometimes, but not always, right? That sometimes I felt like it came out of restricting, for example, or having unrealistic expectations about my body size. But sometimes I couldn't figure out what it was attached to. So that was, again, another layer of confusion, just feeling like, but I'm a strong feminist. I don't understand why I'm doing this.
And that feeling of confusion is so common too. Just and why, right? Like you said, there are all these factors. Like, okay, I can understand if you have these sets of things in your life, okay, it would make sense. But why, when you have so much going for you, and like you said, you feel like you didn't buy into those things, that you got caught up in that. And one thing that you talked about, Andrea, about, that feeling like it was attached to emotions, but that it was attached to every emotion. How did you try to manage that at first in your life? Did you try to just avoid different emotions, or what did you try to do to get yourself to stop doing it?
Oh my gosh, yes. So, and this was, again, through counseling, which gave me some wonderful insights in my life, but didn't help me stop binge eating at all. But I went through years and years of counseling, and I think at least 2 years of an eating disorder support group, all these different things where I would, try to kind of analyze my feeling or analyze a binge and figure out what was the trigger for that and what could I do differently. So I did develop all of these strategies, right? I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to call a friend. I'm going to read a book, watch a movie, right? So I had pages of lists of strategies to do when I felt like I was susceptible to binge behavior. I also tried all of these rewards. So I developed this whole kind of reward system. Like, if I can get through this party without binging, I'll get $25 to spend, at my favorite clothing store. Or if I can get through this week without binge eating, I'll get another $25 to spend at a bookstore or something like that. So I had this system of kind of ways to keep myself otherwise occupied when I felt like the urge to binge. And I had this system of rewards. Like, if I can only abstain this week, then I'll have this other reward that will be better than the binge eating, right? I remember on a trip one time, I actually had a picture on my computer screen of a dress I was going to buy if I could like get through this trip without binge eating. So I tried all the things. I felt like I had tried all the things, right? I had really done all of this work with intuitive eating and, thinking about my emotions and stuff like that. Figuring out what my triggers were and trying to avoid the triggers, or trying to, when I felt the trigger, do something else to kind of occupy my time. And some of it worked. There was I think you talk about this white knuckle approach of willpower. And I feel like sometimes it did work. Sometimes I could white knuckle it through a party or a day or a stressful time. And those moments of having it work, I guess, made the times when it didn't work even worse, because I would think, oh, well, I was able to like white knuckle it through, X, Y, Z. Why couldn't I do it through ABC, right? Or what was it about this particular situation that made it so different? My willpower didn't last. So I tried a lot of different strategies through the years.
Absolutely. And how, like percentage-wise, Andrea, like thinking of your day, what would you say the percentage was that went to binging, thinking about binging, thinking of trying to not think about trying not to binge, the reward system, like all of that sort of like food brain, percentage-wise, how much of your mental energy in your day was going towards that?
Oh gosh, I kind of don't even want to imagine. I would say at the worst, sometimes maybe 80% of my day. I remember waking up and the first thought I would have is, what am I going to have for breakfast? What am I going to have for lunch? How am I going to structure my day? How am I going to make it through today? Oh, today's a stressful day, so I know that's a trigger. So how am I going to like figure out my food so that I don't binge? Or how am I going to be away from the house or something so I don't binge? So there was, not every single day, but at its worst, I would say maybe 80 or 90% of figuring out what I was going to eat and when and how I was not going to overeat, or how I was going to restrict, how I was going to keep calories low, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Too much time, way too much time.
80% of your life. Yeah. That's so interesting. That is the most common response that I get when I talk to women. It's 80%.
Oh, wow.
It's like, that's so much life,
Well, and I don't think I realized how much it was taking up until it was gone. And then I realized I had just had this kind of running commentary. Like, I don't think I thought when I was in the midst of my worst moments, like, oh, wow, this is a lot of the day I've spent thinking about food. I never once had that thought. It was just this kind of running commentary in the back of my, like, background music or something in a movie, like it was just always present. And as soon as it started to go away was when I started to realize how common and loud it was, right? And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm not thinking about food. Oh, I woke up and I just ate breakfast. I didn't lie in bed and try to figure out what I was going to eat for breakfast, right? It was just, I got up and I ate breakfast. Oh, it happened to be lunchtime and I had lunch. I didn't think for hours about what I was going to eat for lunch, So I think the moving away was what finally allowed me to see how much energy I was actually giving to it. I think in the moment, I didn't understand how much energy it was taking at all.
Yeah. It's just a part of you. Like, you're kind of in the survival mode, right? Where it's like, you're just trying so hard all the time. You're just on this constant cycle and treadmill. And yeah.
Yeah, I like that you said trying so hard all the time, because that's what it felt like. Like, I'm just trying so hard to get through this day. And I would look around and see other people and be like, are other people thinking, trying this hard to eat lunch like a normal human being? I remember going out to lunch with friends and just watching them and thinking like, okay, this is how they eat. Like, I could probably do that, right? But like, I just couldn't figure out how to kind of eat normally.
Yeah. Or did you have that thought? I know this came up all the time for me, is like when I'd go out with people, is like how do they do that? Like, I would see somebody just kind of like forget about the rest of their side dish, and I was just like tracking it the whole time. I'm like, are they going to eat it? Are they going to eat it? Why aren't they eating it? Are they not thinking about it? Are they thinking about it, but they're just trying to pretend that they're not thinking about it? Wait, are they going to leave it there? Wait, we're leaving. It's still on their plate. Like, it was like this like constant, like, how do they do that? Right?
And who are these people who like wrap up a third of a sandwich or something? I'd be like, what are you doing with that? How is that possible? And I would try to be that, like, I'm just going to leave a third of my meal. And then the whole time, like you said, I would be thinking like, well, when is the server going to come? When am I going to eat it again? It was just like ridiculous amounts of energy.
Yeah. Yeah. Walk us through like the details of what your real experience was. So you said that at your worst, you were probably binging every day. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So like 7 days a week. And how would it usually start out? Like walk us through, like, would you wake up in the morning and would you think you were going to binge, or what would you try to not do it? And then what was kind of the pattern of your thoughts and your actions? And then what did you actually do? Would you walk us through kind of like what your daily experience was like?
Yeah, well, something that you have really helped me to understand is that restriction and binge eating are two sides of the same coin. So I would actually start the day often restricting, right? So I'm going to see how little I can eat, or I'm going to try to keep calories low. There was a while I was really into juicing. So I'm just going to have juice in the morning and nothing until noon, or whatever. I would immediately start with restricting. Also, I think because the day before, maybe things had gone awry. Maybe the day before I had binged. So I would think, okay, this is a new day. Today I'm going to start on the right foot. I'm going to be basically restricting all day. Although I didn't have that language. I didn't think about it that way. I would still be thinking, how am I going to kind of recover from yesterday's mishaps? So I would start the day, lying in bed, figuring out how little I was going to eat basically for breakfast, what it was going to look like, how long I could probably go with eating as little as possible. And then thinking, I think at some point about lunch and dinner, right? Starting already, at 9 or 10 in the morning, thinking about what am I going to have for lunch? What am I going to have for dinner? What are my snack options for today? And heaven forbid there was like a dinner planned with friends or out, because that would cause this other level of stress. I don't know what's going to be there. Should I, look at the menu of the restaurant and choose now what I'm going to eat? Like all of this kind of just obsessive behavior. So by the time I think the afternoon rolled around, I had already spent so much energy, so much of that willpower, I think, trying to restrict, that I just kind of ran out. So often by, 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I would start snacking and then snacking more, and then kind of down this slippery slope, I guess, of snacking and snacking and snacking that would turn into a binge at some point. And I think, again, I had all of these kind of like little awards or little systems in my mind. So if I stop eating now, it won't be a binge, right? Or if I stop, I've already eaten too much, but if I stop now, I can still count it as like a successful day. And again, that hardly ever worked. So often for me, the binge behavior was really afternoon, evening time. And I think just from kind of having spent the day not giving my body enough food, and thinking obsessively about food, that was the kind of the tipping point where I was just exhausted and I couldn't keep it up any longer.
What was the feeling of not being able to keep it up any longer? Like when you were actually in the binge, like what were some of your feelings and thoughts, emotions?
No, what I remember most strongly actually is just numbness, feeling totally out of control, but also feeling numb, like there weren't any more feelings anymore. So it wasn't necessarily sadness or relief or anything I've heard other people talk about. I just felt like I checked out. And I would kind of feel like I came to again and would be like, oh, I ate all of this, but how did this happen? So it felt like just, I guess, a wariness and kind of finally feeling like, I don't know what's happened. This feeling of out of control, but also like almost disassociation, like not being present in the moment in any way. So that by the time I was finished eating or felt sick or, whatever happened, had to go do something else, had to, take part in my life, I would just be kind of stunned at what had happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. Like, your story is so incredible. And with all the women that I talk to, it's amazing how many similarities there are. So just know, like, your story is speaking to so many other women right now. So I appreciate so much that you're just being so real and you, and I love that. So thank you, thank you. Tell us a little bit about what were some of the biggest costs in your life from the binge eating?
I think that honestly, the biggest cost was feeling so disconnected from other people. Like, this is a secret that I have, and I feel shame about it, right? And I kind of should know better. I'm a grown woman, I'm a feminist, I shouldn't be engaging in these behaviors. I think maybe especially since I started in high school, it felt like that's so adolescent. Why am I still doing this? So I think there was a real inability, at its worst at least, to connect like on a really true level with other people and share this aspect of my life. But I think there was also tied to that so much inability just to be free in the world, right? To have a girlfriend say, come on over for dinner, and just say, yes, okay, great, right now, I'm coming, right? Not asking about what's going to be there or what every ingredient is in the meal or any of those things. Just the freedom to, I think, experience my life fully and joyfully and without all of these made up rules was the biggest cost. And again, I didn't realize that I was so constricting myself until I no longer was. So until I was feeling more of this food freedom, I realized, oh, wow, like I was saying no to so many opportunities to spend time with friends because of this behavior, or to be honest with other people because of this behavior.
Yeah. So it sounds like just the joy in your life, the spontaneity, the being able to connect with people in a real way, all those things were just absent because of the binge eating, right?
Totally. And I think my stress was so high because of it, because I was always trying to moderate myself. And I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. But I think, again, there was this like background moderation that was always present that I had a really hard time working around or working against. I don't know. But it just felt like, my stress level was so high because of that.
Yeah. How did your stress level through that, or as a result of that, like how did that added stress manifest in your life, or like how did that impact you?
Well, I think years and years of it made me have trouble sleeping, increased my anxiety. I was in the past year diagnosed with an adrenal dysfunction and thyroid issues. And I think some of that must have been the constant stress of this behavior and the shame around this behavior. So I think it was, again, this kind of background noise that was filling my life all the time and distracting me from really more important things that I could be spending my life on.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about just the financial cost. I think it's an interesting thing to look at that a lot of times we don't look at. It's kind of like because like it's such unexpected, like, okay, I binged again, right? So what would you say is the typical like amount of money that you would spend on a binge in one day?
Oh, that is so hard. I'm not really even sure how I would calculate that. I think for me, there was more money spent on the restricting behavior. So, more money spent on things like the latest new diet plan, the latest cookbook that was going to, change my life so I wouldn't binge eat, or, the years and years of therapy, the money spent on therapy and like these eating disorder groups, all of the books I read on intuitive eating and emotional eating and compulsive eating. I mean, I have a library filled with books on a wide variety of eating related subjects. So I feel like that might be, in the thousands of dollars, honestly. The binging itself, I'm not really sure. More money than I would want to admit, probably. But for me, the sadder cost, I guess, was all of the money that I spent trying to get rid of the behavior and having it not work. Right? Feeling like, okay, there's this new book. If I just read this book and do all the things in the book, now I'm going to be free from this. And then not having it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at that, is there any other like big cost that was a cost of the eating disorder that you're just so happy to be rid of, or just another way that it's really impacted your life? And it's okay if that's kind of like summed it up, but just wondering, like, is there anything else that sticks out in your mind? Like, wow, like that sucked.
There's so much that sucked. I mean, just waking up and feeling bad about myself first thing in the morning, going to sleep feeling bad about myself, was really hard. And I think, I think that my self-esteem has improved since finally getting rid of this habit. I think I feel stronger as a person. I have more mental space than I ever thought I would have. So there were just so many costs. And when I think about kind of all of the years of these costs and, the emotional, the physical, the financial, it just kind of breaks my heart, because I feel like if I had just found you a little bit earlier, or found some of this information a little earlier, then I wouldn't have had to struggle for so long.
Yeah. So now, tell us about now. Like, what does recovery, what does freedom look like for you? Like, what are those little miracles in your life that you're experiencing? You've said a few of them, which I love, have just kind of been, sprinkled in your story. Just what a relief it is to just have this, this mental energy back. And like, but describe for those who haven't been there yet, like describe what freedom looks like for you.
Well, I think this is such a great question, because I know when we first started working together, maybe when I first found some of your videos online, actually, I still had this sense of, oh, that's nice for you. Like, I'm glad that worked for you, but it's not going to work for me. I've tried all the things, I've gone through all the counseling, I've done all the groups, I've read all the books, and it hasn't worked. So this was kind of my last ditch effort. But I think I had in the back of my head this belief, like, well, this worked for Lydia, and that's great, and I'm so happy for her, but it's not going to work for me because none of these other things have. So I think it is really important to share, how much freedom, how great freedom can feel from these things. So I think, now on a day-to-day basis, I think about food in terms of, what a lovely lunch I'm going to have, or making food for dinner, or how I'm going to nourish my body, how I'm going to give myself the best possible fuel to get through the day. I don't count calories. I don't count anything. I count taste, I guess. How good does this taste? And that's been a real shift, right? To not make a choice on a menu because of how many calories I think something has, but what I think will taste best, or what I'm most interested in, right? Tonight I want to eat this, and that's the choice I'm going to make. That is a real freedom that I didn't have for a really long time. I think also going through the day, just not worrying about food, not waking up and that's my first thought. Now I wake up and my first thought is like my to-do list, which is probably just as problematic in different ways. But it's really nice to not have that be your first thought and your 7,000th thought when you go to bed, right? About what am I going to eat tomorrow, and how is tomorrow going to look? It's just, my meals and my food are just things that I do to enjoy myself, or to fuel my body, or, to share a nice dinner with friends. And that's it. It has no emotional weight anymore, which I think is the biggest release, I guess, and maybe the biggest disservice of all of my years of counseling, all of the emotional weight I put on food, instead of just understanding this as a habit, right? A habit like smoking that I could overcome. Millions of people stop smoking. I could overcome this binge eating habit, and I did. And I think that has been a real freedom, the biggest freedom, I think.
Beautiful. What makes, like, how confident do you feel, like, when you say, and I did, right? Like, what reassures you that you're done, that you're over it? Like, instead of, the things that you've tried where you're kind of just white knuckling it, right? Like, how do you know that you're free?
That's a great question. I think some of how I know is that I've had experiences just of like overeating like a normal human being. So, for Thanksgiving, for example, ate more than I would have liked to eat. But at no moment did I feel out of control. At no moment did I feel numb to the world. I never felt like I couldn't stop eating. I wasn't like sneaking in the kitchen to get more food when nobody was looking. I didn't worry about the leftovers, right? We had a refrigerator stuffed full of leftovers, and I just ate them as I wanted to eat them. It wasn't something that I was worried about. So I've had these experiences of being like, oh, sometimes we all overeat, and then you just move on with your life. And you just kind of think about oh yeah, that was a day I ate a little more than I would have liked. Oh well, next day you get up and just, you're a normal person still. So I think that kind of behavior assures me like, yeah, there are always days that you want to celebrate or whatever, and that's totally normal and welcome to being a human being, but there doesn't have to be any drama around that. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. It doesn't have to mean I'm a bad person, right? It just is Thanksgiving or whatever, whatever the day is. And I think really letting go of restricting was an important step in that, so that I don't set myself up because I'm just hungry. When I first started working with you, I realized at different points, oh, I just want to eat a lot because I'm hungry. Right. And I've been so hungry for so many hours and trying to pretend I'm not, that at a certain point, the body is just like, get anything in me right now. Right. And I think allowing myself to eat regularly and not restricting and just kind of going through my day, eating regular meals, means that I never get to a point of just wanting to shove food in my mouth, because I'm well nourished. I spend the day well nourished.
Yeah, I love that. Just like a normal eater, a normal person.
I guess it happens. It's totally, it feels so simple and silly. And sometimes, I remember at different points in trying to recover, feeling like, there are all of these people in this world who don't have enough food. And here I'm being a crazy person around food. Or here I'm making up all of these rules about when to eat and how much to eat and all of this stuff. And there are all of this, people in the world who would love to have even a tenth of the access to food that I have. And I felt so much guilt around that, which again made the shame and all of that kind of thing worse. And so now to just move through the world being appreciative of the food that I have and the access to it that I have, and not feeling like I'm abusing it, is just such a relief. It feels miraculous. It really does.
And do you feel like the way that you eat aligns with who you truly are?
I do. I think there have been times when that's changed a little bit, right? So for example, for many years I was vegetarian and I was vegan at different points, and now I'm eating meat for a couple of different reasons. So I still struggle with some of that, right? Of being like, oh, I had this identity as a vegetarian for so long. And what does it mean now that I'm eating meat? What does that mean to my identity? But I feel like part of my identity now is this lack of restriction. And I think for me, sometimes being vegetarian masked restrictive behaviors, right? Because I could kind of wipe out all of these food groups that I was just saying were off the table. So I think kind of allowing myself to have choices now, and allowing myself to choose based on what I might be, craving on a given day or just desiring on a given day, really is aligned with who I'm trying to be more and more, right? Rather than kind of following these particular rules that I made up or somebody else made up, right? Which is another thing that I think came to me with so much of the food freedom is, oh, I just made those rules up. Like that doesn't exist. I made it up. I decided it meant something. And then I got mad at myself when I didn't follow them. That makes no sense. So to not have to do that anymore is definitely aligned with my who I see myself as.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm so happy for you. I love seeing you free. Like, this is just such a fun thing. This is what it's all about. And walk us through a little bit, just kind of briefly, when we started working together, like what was kind of the pattern? Like what was the evolution of your insights and what you understood, like that got you from where you're at to where you're at now? Like what are some of the things along the way? What was it like to go through that process of recovery and freedom?
Well, honestly, it was really scary. So I remember early on when you talked about restricting, I really had this reaction of like, no, but I have to, like, you don't understand. And I didn't even think I understood all of the restrictive behavior I was engaging in, honestly, at that time. But that it was really scary to let that go. It was really scary not to weigh myself. Right? I remember talking with you at a certain point about just, putting the scale away or just not getting on it. And I think somebody actually had talked about throwing their scale away. And I was like, that's ridiculous. Like, there's no way I'm going to throw my scale away. Like, you're crazy. So it was scary to give up some of that, right? I didn't throw my scale away, by the way, but just to not step on it every day was really scary. Or to feel like, but I have had this thing that was part of my identity for so many years, and I'm going to be giving it up. And I want to give it up, right? I keep saying I want to give it up, but if I actually succeed this time, what does that mean? That was really scary too. So I think one of the first like kind of aha moments was thinking about binge eating as a habit, like any other habit that we engage in. And this one, maybe it served me well at some point in the past, but it was clearly not serving me well anymore. And I was ready to be done with it. And I think that gave me so much power over this thing that I felt powerless in front of before, right? For so many years, I just felt like I have no control around food, and I have to arrange my life so that like I won't lose control around it. So to kind of instead feel like, oh no, this is just a habit and I can break this habit, and it will be hard, right? I'm sure it's really hard to give up smoking, or to give up chewing your nails or whatever, but this is a habit that I can break. That was really empowering. So I think that was a real kind of aha moment amongst the scary times. And then I think just kind of watching it work was really fundamentally empowering, I guess. Again, having experience of calling out the chatter and kind of laughing at it, like, wait, what am I just telling myself? Right. That was really powerful too. Like, right, I don't believe that. Why in my head does it seem like this is so important? And yet when I speak it out loud, I realize how silly I'm being. Those were some really important moments that I could kind of keep building on. So I think I didn't have the experience where, I watched one of your videos or read Catherine Hanson's book and all of a sudden just stopped binging. I was much more of a journey, I guess, for me, where I felt like I had to keep practicing and keep practicing and keep practicing. And I wrote on my calendar every single day, every single week, just keep practicing, and kind of just having a playful spirit about it, I think allowed me to just kind of keep calling out the chatter, keep thinking about how my brain was working, keep thinking about this behavior as a habit that I could break, with the biggest kind of steps forward.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so well just put, like just that journey that you had. And like you said, just watching it work, just like trusting the process. And for you, like, what do you feel was for you or is so important about having like you and I, like we work together, right? It wasn't like, what's the difference between just, maybe trying to read another book or watch some videos and like actually having like real coaching? Like, what do you feel like is the difference, or why is that important?
Oh my gosh, I think the real coaching was really valuable. It was 100% the difference. I think having you in front of me as a real live breathing person who was telling me this worked was so important, right? And I think, again, like when I had counseling groups or things like that, I never had a counselor who said, oh, I've been in that experience too, or I've also beat this or something like that. So I just didn't have a model out there, I think. So having you as a model that this could actually work was just unbelievably powerful. And I think being able to work with the other women and some of our time, having that like group time as well, was really so important, because I think I had kind of made myself believe I was just the crazy person who had this crazy behavior and nobody else did. So to all of a sudden have all of these people saying, oh no, I have that crazy behavior too. Let's support each other in getting beyond it was really, really valuable. I mean, I know I would go to the Facebook page like in the middle of the night if I couldn't sleep and just read through people's comments and try to chime in to support other people or see what other people's struggle was on a given day. And that was also helpful, you know, to not feel like you're alone. And I think, like, talking about shame again, kind of breaking out of the shame closet, right? And just saying, yeah, I mean, I may be a crazy person, but here's my crazy, and I'm going to show it to you, and please help me figure out what to do with it, was really, really important. And I wouldn't have gotten that from a book, you know? I mean, I think like watching your videos was an amazing first step. And I will never admit to you how many times I've watched some of the videos, like in the middle of the night again, just like on my phone. okay, right. Call up the chatter, right? Like going through the steps. But it was a lot. I'll just tell you, it was a lot. But I think just having the chance to work with you one-on-one and having your like in-person feedback took me the next step.
Awesome. I love it. And this is all to say, like, this is what it's about. Like, tell us, like, you've talked a little bit about like your poetry and what you do and your feminism, but like, tell us, who is Andrea? Like, what is important to you? Like, what are some of your causes in life, or what are the things that you feel are just important to bring awareness to, or like, what are you about? So let us know you a little bit more, like as a woman, as you.
Well, I think honestly, that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this video with you, was because I feel like such a strong feminist, right? And for so many years, I've done so many feminist activities, you know, women's voter registration campaigns and anti-war campaigns and women's reproductive right campaigns, all this kind of thing. And yet I still felt like I had this gnawing thing that I couldn't overcome, and that feels like a feminist issue. So I think for me, breaking women out of food obsession, food shoes, as you say, and giving them really specific tools to overcome these issues, so that it's not, they're not blaming themselves for not finding success, right? That we can connect with one another and understand that if success hasn't happened before, we just didn't have the right strategies, right? But that success is possible. It does exist out there. And that once we can move towards success, there is so much more daily mental space to do other things. So, I mean, I've been just devastated by the recent presidential election, personally, and kind of as a woman, I think. And so I think having the freedom in my day, in my mental space, to, you know, call my senators and try to advocate for things that I believe in, like the Affordable Care Act, has been really important and really powerful. And to remember that I can do that, and that I have a voice, and that I can use my voice, is really important. And helping other women to see that and really grasp a hold of their power too, because they're not obsessing about food all day, I think is really important. I mean, I think if we all just were, you know, eating our normal meals and going about our day, we could really affect huge change in this world by kind of focusing our energy into causes that we care passionately about.
Yeah. And I'm so happy that there's more of your mind and your passion for the world, because it's not being 80% taken up by, you know, that specter that's always with you, that's always at you, and being free from that. And I love to see just what you're about, and that you can be more about it and have more, you know, bandwidth and energy and time and freedom for that. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I appreciate you so much sharing your story. And is there anything else on your mind that you wanted to share today, or that you feel to share before we wrap up? Or do you feel like it's complete?
You know, I guess the only final thing I would say is thank you to you, because I think you have done such an amazing job of meeting women where they are. And maybe you have men clients too, but particularly it seems like you meet women where they are, and you speak a language we understand, right? And I think because you've walked the path a little bit before the rest of us, you're really inspiring. So I really want to thank you for putting these tools out into the world, and then being so willing to work with so many of us to help us kind of follow along with you. It's a really important service that you're doing the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That feels so wonderful, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate you. And I just want to bring this all back to, I mean, Andrea, I love your life. I love what you're about, and you are a beautiful example of this. And on a larger scale, like, this is what I do. Like, this is my cause. Like, yes, I muted myself by accident. Yes, I want people to be able to be free from this. Like, yes, absolutely. But that's just on the way to what this is really about. Like, this is about freeing women from the chains that, because of what society tells them and because of what diet culture tells them, they literally have these chains on themselves that they're maintaining themselves, and they don't even realize that. And having so much of your brain back, I mean, what I do is I free strong women so that they can be unhindered from doing what they need to do in the world, from creating the things that they need to create, from changing the world to be the place that it should be and could be with the influence of all these amazing women. Like, I am building an army of free women to go out and to change the world. And it's such a silly, silly thing that food and a disordered relationship with that would hold back women in their lives from doing what they need to do. So that's really what it's all about. And I'm so excited that you are one of those women, and go forth into the world and do your thing. And I'm so happy to just know you, and thank you for sharing your story. It is such an incredibly powerful story. And I thank you so much for being on today.
Oh, thank you so much, Lydia. I really appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. And this is Lydia, the lifestyle coach. And you can find more videos at lydiavideo.com. And if you're watching this, you're probably already there. So just subscribe so that you get updates. Every Monday, there's a new video. You can also go to lydialifestyle.com. And from there, you can get your free ebook, How to Stop Binge Eating and Be Successful at Everything Else. And the Facebook group that Andrea was talking about is available for you. It's a free Facebook support group, and there will be a link in the show notes so that you can get right there, or you can go to lydialifestyle.com and there's a link there. There's so many things for you to help you on your journey, and I would be happy to chat with you and to help you be free as well if you feel like you aren't right now. Like, no one that wants to be free should have to not be free. There. So, Lydia, the lifestyle coach, and Andrea signing up. Goodbye. Mwah.